Welcome back to part 2 of this series of making an epoxy river table. In this video, I will show you guys how to clean the live edge slab, removing the bark, sanding it down, cutting it to size to place inside of the mold, calculating an approximate amount of epoxy that you will need for your project, and the fun part of pouring the epoxy. Okay, so hope you guys stay tuned throughout the entire video. If you guys are new to this channel, welcome. My name is Romario, and this is Build with Romario, where we bring positive energy to all projects. Welcome back if you've been here before. Let's get right into it. We got a lot of fun ahead of us. And just letting you guys know, everything I'm using in this project is going to be linked down below in the description. I have a free beginner's tool guide for those who are new. You can find it be linked down below. And also throughout this project, when we get to the epoxy portion, I do also have a resin, an epoxy calculator that's free for you down below. It's in the form of an Excel sheet, okay, just for your use. And if you find any value in this video, I hope you guys can leave a like and a subscribe. My channel is probably at 900 at this point. Please help me push to 1,000. And thank you guys for your continued support, by the way. Thank you so much. I really do appreciate it. All right, let's get to it. All right, guys. So the mold is complete. And now it's on to the next step, which is prepping the live edge slabs. On this one, there's a lot of burr. I gotta scrape this off, just peel it off rather. It's gonna be easy to come out. And then I'm going to sand it down with 80 grit sandpaper. I'm gonna sand down the sides, but before I do that, I'm gonna cut these two boards to size. Right now it's 6 foot. I'm gonna cut it to be 48 and 1/4 of an inch so I can fit it in the mold. Also guys, just to let you know, I did mark this out, mark out my table to see how these slabs line up in the middle before I make my cuts, because I wanna orientate the wood the way I would like the finish to be. This is how it is for me. I'm just gonna cut off the back ends because I'm okay with not having that. I think this is a nice shape for the river. So just keep in mind before you make any cuts, put it together to see how it looks first before you take off a piece that you would have preferred. So what I'm doing right now, I'm just getting rid of the high spots, and then I'm going in with an 80 grit sandpaper and just knocking out all of it. And I'll keep going until it's clean, like this edge right here. Not this, but here. You'll see when I get to it. But I don't have a grinder like most of the videos of people that I've seen do it. So I'm just doing with what I have, which is this, a scraper. I'm getting off the high spots, and then I'll finish it off with the 80 grit sandpaper. Okay guys, so there's 80 grit sandpaper did the trick for this slab, but for this one I needed to get a little bit more aggressive, so I got a 60 grit sandpaper and I'm working my way through You can see the discoloration here. I need to remove this layer. I even went out and got a wire wheel because they need to get a little bit more aggressive on this section too. So I'm gonna remove this layer right here that you can see, removing that, so I can make sure that epoxy sticks to the wood with no problems. So this is with the 60 grit sandpaper. I was able to get some off. So I'm gonna continue to work my way through. And also just in general, of course I said I was only gonna use sandpaper, but this does help move things along. And if you wanna save more time, you can go ahead and get a 4.5-inch angle grinder. I got this over at Harbor Freight. It's pretty inexpensive, $30, just to speed up the process of sanding. Well, removing the layer that needs to be gone. I didn't have it. I feel like there's value in getting it, but you can get it done with some sandpaper, okay? So I'm just gonna continue to move along with this, and I don't think I need this right now. I already started with sandpaper, but let's finish this up and move on to the next step. All right, guys, so it's all cleaned and it's ready to go. Just a disclaimer, I did have to go in with the angle grinder. I know earlier I said that we can do this with just a sander, but there were some sections that I needed to go a lot more aggressive on. So as I mentioned before, I did go out and get the grinder. I did use it smoothen up some spots or to take off some material. Just a tip for you guys, if you want to move faster, use the right tools. Something I've learned, of course. The angle grinder does do the trick for hard woods. This is some hardwood that I'm dealing with. If it's softer woods, then a sander would definitely do the trick. You wouldn't want to use something aggressive like that, the angle grinder, because it will take off too much material, okay? But for this, I had to go with the angle grinder. All right, so this is all done. I just swept the shop a little bit. There's still dust in the air, so I'm just gonna wait till that settles for a bit, and then we're gonna move this onto the mold to get the pour completed. Let me show you something that I did with my mold as well. Just a pro tip for you guys: when you guys sanding in your shop, be sure to cover your mold with some plastic because there's dust everywhere, okay? And when it settles, as you know, everywhere. So just protect this, or else you'll have to do a lot of cleanup when it's time to use your mold. So let's wait till the dust is settled and then we will continue. All right, guys, we're ready to rock and roll. Everything is clean and ready to go. The dust has settled, so let's move on. All right, I'm just gonna move this carefully, try to prevent any more dust from rising up in the air. Okay, what I'm gonna do is still go ahead and try to wipe this down, just in case there's any dust that's around. I'll take my cloth, my towel, shop cloths, shop towels. You could use a microfiber cloth as well to do this. Okay, it's clean and ready to go. Let me go ahead and wipe the wood as well. Make sure it's debris free. That I suggest using a microfiber cloth for. Do not have any insights, so. Tell you a lot of dust is coming off of this. When I say microfiber cloth is because you don't want this breaking off into the wood, the towel. I'm just paying attention to when it does, so I'm just removing it. You can do this with a microfiber cloth and alcohol or acetone, okay? Just do a wipe on the sides, on the top, and then you should be good. So I'm just gonna place this in and then get to the other one. I know I gotta practice what I preach, so I'm just gonna put on some gloves. I would advise you guys to keep your gloves on, and I should have definitely have it on from the beginning of passing my hand on this wood. Of course, there could be splinters. You wanna avoid that. All right, so now it's set. In order to get the amount of epoxy that you'll need for your project, you'll need to measure out the height, the width, and the length of your project. Now, for these type of projects, specifically with live edge, it's odd shapes. So I'm gonna show you how I measured out or calculated the epoxy or the volume that I would need for this. I broke it up in sections. Now, let me bring you guys closer to show you how I kind of sectioned it off and how I did the math for it. There's gonna be a resin calculator, Excel sheet in the description below so you can follow on with your project. Okay, so if you look closely, you see there's a slope on each side. So I couldn't necessarily go ahead and do the full math on the width being 7 inches. Let's say roughly 7 inches, right? That's to the top of the board where the slope ends, okay? 7 inches. Now, because I can't take the full length at 7 inches because as you see, there's a slope on the bottom. And the bottom is smaller space than the top. In this specific section, it's roughly roughly 3.5 inches. Okay, so what I did is take the measurement below 3.5 and the measurement on the top at 7. I add them up and I divide it by 2 to get the average for this specific section. Now, this section that I'm talking about, that 7 inches on the top, 3.5 on the bottom, I kind of went down to see where it's similar in size, and it's roughly 20 inches long. So I made a mark. At my 20-inch section right here, and I took the measurements so I can continue to progress. Okay, so I set for that section that it's 7 inches by plus the 3.5 inches, right, divided by 2. Once I get that, I'll continue to move on. It is 5.25, so 5.25 inches. Okay, and we know that it's 20, so this is going to be the width. The height is going to be the thickness of the slab, which is 1.5 in height, and the length, I already told you, it's 20 inches in length. Okay, so did the math with that, and you're gonna do this for the entire board. Okay, you get the average for a section that's similar in terms for the full length that you're going for. For this, my 20 inches in length, it was very similar, so I marked that down for that section to have 7 and 3.5 from in the bottom and the top divided by 2, and then you have this measurements for one section. You do it for the full board. My board is 48 inches. I continue to go on and break it up in different sections. Once you have your math for that, you go on, do the average, come down, and then once you have it all, plug into the calculator these dimensions per section to get the ounces for epoxy per section. For this section, it will be 87.25 ounces. You can plug this into the calculator that you download, which is for free, down below in the Excel sheet. Just plug this in and see if it comes out the same, if not, roughly the same, and you continue to punch that in sections. I'll try to make it easy for you to where it's broken out in a way where you can have multiple sections that adds up the epoxy outputs for each section, meaning to give you the total so you don't have to do too much work. You just plug in the numbers. The height, it should be the same, which is just the thickness of the slab that you're working with, and then you just get the overall, the width, the length, so you can get your ounces output. Okay, and it will just add it up per section to give you a total. So for my total, and just want to show you the chicken scratch that I did, I had a lot of sections that I worked with to get my numbers. My own came up to roughly 305, approximately 305 ounces. Okay, so I'm gonna see how close this actually came out when I do make the pour. I'm gonna pour a little bit more than 305. I'm gonna make it 312 ounces just to be safe. Why I'm doing that is because the epoxy I'm using 2:1, so it's 2 part for part A and 1 part for part B. This is a full gallon, this is a half a gallon. So whatever my total measurement is gonna be, of course, is gonna be the A part is gonna be 2 times the part B. Since I'm doing 312 at this point, it's gonna be 208 for part A and then 104 for part B. It's gonna be working with 305 is an odd number. If I go to 306, I just wanna be a little bit higher than that. Those 6 I can get a good math on. I just wanna be able to have enough epoxy when I do pour. I don't mind having a little bit extra, but again, let's see how close I was with the 305. May have been overshooting at that point or undershooting, but I rather overshoot in this case. Okay, let's move on to the next step. Now that you know the amount of epoxy that you need, or you know how to find the amount of epoxy you need for a project, you're golden. Okay. Oh, disclaimer, Stone Coat is not a sponsor of this video. They do have a great product that I use various projects. Specifically for this type of project, I do trust the brand, so that's why I'm directing you to them. And of course, product has been really good to me, and yeah, I'll continue to use them, honestly. Okay, so now you have the epoxy that you need, the amount that you need. Let's make sure that our project is leveled. Okay, so let me show you. I already leveled mine, so it was not initially leveled, so I had to make some adjustments. I added this piece of wood to bring it up a bit. Okay, so that's good to go. The next thing you want to do, make sure that you wipe the surface again to make sure that it's debris free. Go ahead and use your microfiber cloth, clean the inside, just pass it there in case some dust fell into it. Make sure it's clean. ready to go. All right. Next, you want to secure the lumber to the mold. Make sure it's tightly pressed against the base of your mold because epoxy is definitely going to seep under it. And in case your slab has a bow or a slight bow that's kind of pushed up, well, at least for your board, and stay as flat as possible and cure that way as well, and kind of tighten up the gaps that's beneath the board. Okay, you likely lose roughly an eighth of an inch of epoxy running under, but nonetheless, the thinner it is, the better that seeps in. It's gonna seep in regardless, but nonetheless. My board has a slight bow, just slightly, very slightly. So that's gonna help me in this regard. So how are we gonna do that? We're gonna place some wood on top and we're gonna clamp it down. Now, just a disclaimer as well, I don't have a planer to run this to make my boards flat. So this is gonna sort of help me in this case. It is advised to flatten your boards prior to doing this project, but again, I do not have a planer at this point in time, and I didn't necessarily make the time to go find a store, a shop that has one that I can use. But for the purpose of this project, just giving you the information that you can use it, okay? This project will be fine. Even if the epoxy runs under it, it's gonna be okay. I compensated enough for it. Okay, so for these blocks that you're placing on the slab, you're gonna wanna make sure to protect it with some Tyvek tape is what I'm using, so I advise it, because in case the epoxy runs over and hits the wood, once it's all cured, you can remove it easily because it's not gonna bind to the Tyvek tape. If you just leave the raw wood, it's gonna bind to your slab, a lot harder to remove, okay? So I have these, I already prepped them. You just run it over with Tyvek tape. You don't need to do both surfaces because only one surface is touching the slab. I just did both just because I went crazy with it. Okay, so I lay them here, bring a big board, I rest it over. Make sure this is thick enough, or whatever you're placing in here is large enough or thick enough to be above your mold side, because you don't want it pressing on. It will practically defeat the purpose of pushing the board downward. Okay, so I have this here and I'm gonna get my clamps. Some people also use weight and just put the weight down on the slabs. Of course, they have some type of protective, either it's tape or whatever it is that could be used to protect it. You can also put silicone around the sides of your slab, so there's no overflow of resin, or if you were to pour too much, there's no overflow on top, which is actually a great idea. My clamps. Now it is ready for the pour. I do have a video showing you how to mix your resin. I did it for 1:1 ratio epoxy, so it's a little bit easier to follow. In that video, I'll have it linked right up here. But you can follow that video and how to mix your epoxy to do a pour. I'm gonna go ahead and get this prepped with the 312 ounces to get to pouring. All right, so I got my epoxy mixed. This is the color, if you can see it, it's blue. So before we do the full pour, it's advised to go ahead and brush on some on the sides, just to ensure that there's no bubble or pockets that's left once you do make the pour. Okay, so just brush on the sides, get it wet. And then soon after, this is just to prep it for the big pour. For this epoxy, what we're gonna do is pour. Well, actually, let me put some protective. Let me put something to protect the flow on the side. It's best to always be safe. So I have my torch ready. I'm gonna pour roughly a 3/4 of an inch, and then I'm gonna pop the bubbles, and then I'll go again. Let me put on my PPE. That's a beautiful color. Move over to the other side. looks like I don't have too much bubbles right now, which is really nice. Okay, the mold also seems intact. I didn't see any leaks, so that's good. Now let's continue to pour. So thankfully, it seemed like I was probably spot on. If not, just about 1/8 of an inch off with my measurement. I will probably either fill it in or I will leave it and sand it down when I do the last final passes to clean up the top base side. It looks really good. Let's play around with this. The color is what I wanted. I love it. Okay, so now it's for this to cure. I'm gonna come back to it once it's in a gel-like state so I can make the final designs. And then once it's cured in 2 to 4 days, if anything, then we'll come back and make the last video to have it finished. Okay, and then I'll show you guys the legs that will be used. One last thing to show you. I'm gonna use this to fill in some holes here. Let that seep in. I'll do the same for all the little cracks that I have. And again, all the materials that I use is gonna be in the description below. Okay, all right. If you stayed to the end of the video, thank you so much for your support. I hope you found a lot of value in this video, and I hope you guys stay around for the third part of the series, which is me taking it out of the mold, sanding it down, which is going to be a lot of work, cleaning it up, putting on the finish, and adding the leg to make a complete river table. If you guys enjoyed this video, I hope you guys could leave a like on the video, leave a comment down below if you have any questions. I'll get back to you, and hope you subscribe to the channel. I am almost at 1,000 subscribers. Thank you guys all for your support, and see you guys on the next video. Continue to have positive energy. Have a great one.